Alright everyone, it's been a long time since I've done one of these sort of product type review videos. Hi, I'm Rom Howard. It's my music channel. Hello. And what I have here is a Altamira M01F. Alright, and it is a Selmer style guitar. So you know, it's something that you would use for the music of Django Reinhardt and Gypsy jazz in general. Although it's worth pointing out that when you study the history of the Selmers, you know, obviously we're talking about the Macaferri designed, but he only was with Selmer for a small period of time, but he kind of designed that guitar a little bit, and then Selmer kept making them with sort of variations and evolutions of that style. They were originally conceived as classical guitars. They were used on the bandstand in the UK a lot in the 30s and 40s or whatever. So they were used for a lot more than just gypsy jazz, but of course they're now associated with that. So I've long wanted a gypsy jazz guitar. I've been studying that style, and to me, this was the one I ended up getting, and I'll explain why. So first, cost. It's about $900, and let me give a shout out to Gypsy Jazz Distribution on Reverb. Great job, you know, great product, got it to me quickly, safely, you know, really trouble-free transaction, so I recommend them. There's many others like gypsybooks.com and other folks that sell this. I couldn't play these in the store because in Indiana, where I now live, when I started this channel, I was in California. Now I'm in Indiana. You know, you can't just go into a guitar shop and expect there to be these types of things. If you're familiar with these guitars, you might have noticed by now that this is a little bit different. There's not the hole, the small hole or the big oval hole that these guitars typically have. This has F-holes in the upper bout here, and this is in imitation of a classic gypsy jazz guitar called the DiMauro Special Chorus. All right, and it's kind of a legendary guitar. So this would have been late in Django's life. You know, I don't think he ever played one as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong, I have no idea. But of course, just for me, what I like about it is I like F-holes. You know, because I like archtop guitars, and this is not an archtop. It's not made like an archtop, but the F-holes kind of give it that vibe. I also really like, on this one, the inlay placement. The kind of block inlays off-center is really nice, and it kind of really complements the Art Deco elements these guitars tend to have. I mean, you have the traditional tailpiece, which is really nice here. Of course, you have what they call the mustache bridge. And one thing I wanted to point out before I played this just a little bit is I just wanted to point out the very subtle and nicely done antiquing of this. Now, this is very controversial with guitars to sort of artificially age them. This is the first guitar I've ever purchased that has been artificially aged, but this is really subtle. And let me just grab the camera here and move it so that you can see what I'm talking about. If I get real close, you can see that there's some kind of little marks, little markings, little pits, just kind of imperfections. Those are there by design. That is the antiquing on this. Let me just kind of move it around a little more, and you can get a better sense of that. You know, it's not like a perfectly uniform color. Ah, yeah, that's a good shot there. You can see how it's just very moderately antique. So it doesn't look like an instrument that, you know, came brand new out of a factory. It actually does have an instrument that has the feel and look of something that's been sitting around for a while, but well taken care of. I like this type of antiquing. This is very subtle and tasteful. I'm not really against antiquing in general, by the way, but I just think they did a really good job. And let me just talk about the company real quick. So Altamira is a Japanese company, but they oversee the production of these guitars in China, I believe is how it works. So it's a Japanese company, but they're overseeing makers in China. It's sort of similar to Eastman in concept, where this is, these aren't your cheap Chinese guitars that are selling, for a few $100s or less or whatever. This is a high quality instrument, and everything about it says that. I mean, fretwork is great. I've had no problems with it whatsoever. It's a $900. It's going to be around $1,000, give or take or whatever. My only thing is, it did not come with a hard shell case. It came with a very nice soft shell, but not as nice as like Gibson includes with their like tribute guitars that I've reviewed on this channel. Those are soft shell. They're kind of soft hard shell. Like, they have enough protection and hardness in the case where you feel okay if you put it in the back of your van and there's like other packages in it. You're not worried. The soft shell, I don't know if this was supplied by Gypsy Jazz Distribution or by Altamira, where this came from. It's a really nice faux leather case, but it doesn't really have any hardness to it, so you're like really nervous, like if you have to pack it and have it like in your car, and if there's like any box that's got any heft to it at all, you're going to worry. So I'm probably going to need to buy a hard shell case for this at some point, if I want to actually transport this safely and feel good about it. Like, the soft shell case it came with is really nice. It's high quality, but it doesn't really feel protective, especially for an acoustic instrument. Oh, and by the way, the antiquing is only for the top. Like, the rest of this instrument is, what you'd expect everywhere else. Construction, this is a, obviously a solid top guitar with laminate back and sides, which is the standard way these guitars were made. And so as far as the type of wood, so this is, by the way, the finish is a light satin antique finish. Just please excuse me as I just make sure I get this right and don't get this wrong. So yes, it is laminated rosewood back and sides, spruce top, mahogany neck, ebony fingerboard. That's the wood arrangement here. Now, I believe if you go up the price levels, there's a more expensive version of this guitar that I think is more like $1,300-$1,400 or something, maybe. And I think that might have a walnut neck, I believe. And I think walnut is considered yet more traditional. So let me just play this a little bit. Now, keep in mind, I am Gypsy in training when it comes, Gypsy Jazz in training. So I've been working hard at it, going through books and everything for the better part of this last year. But I am by no means a orthodox Gypsy Jazz player. I'm still adapting my technique and everything. So just some single note stuff. Just a little bit of chord work. So my impressions of the guitar sound tremendously loud, like you'd expect. I mean, this just projects like crazy, especially if you really make sure to try to use the proper technique, which is downstroke and rest stroke oriented, which is challenging because, someone who's played rock and jazz guitar, I alternate pick, which you do in Gypsy Jazz, but you have to do a lot more downstrokes just in general, because that brings out the power. Exaggerating a little bit there, but you can just feel, even if this phone recording, you know, this really projects, and you can just feel the whole soundboard just vibrating like crazy, pushing out all this sound. And it's a very punchy, mid-rangey sound, as you would expect. There's a lot of low end though, because that's a stereotype I kept writing about. No low end, all middle, you know. But I find plenty of, at least on this guitar, low end. So, you know, I think it has plenty of low end, but, you know, definitely a lot of mid-range power. One thing I'll say that I had to get used to, and so when I got this guitar, I opened it up and I started playing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this does not play nearly as fast and easy as my archtop, which, you know, has, you know, thicker jazz strings on it. Certainly it doesn't play as fast as my electric guitars do, which I expected. And the action seemed high, but then, you know, I went and I measured it, and no, this is the standard, this is standard to low action for Gypsy jazz. You know, you have to have slightly higher action to get acoustic power out, or else there's just not going to be enough room for the strings to resonate. So you have to remember that when you buy one of these, that there is an adjustment period. And I just remember feeling just a little sad at first. And now that I've gotten used to it, I really don't notice it. I think it's fine. I don't like have any trouble playing stuff, you know, like I would normally. Yeah, I have no trouble now that I'm used to it. It did take a little while. I would recommend, though, one thing I would recommend if you buy a guitar like this, be prepared to change what type of pick that you use. I've been just using heavy picks most of my life, you know, just heavy Jim Dunlop picks. I switched shortly after getting this to a 3mm, what they call, I think it's a Jim Dunlop pick, also the big stubbies. These fellows, you know, 3mm thick. I've also tried some other ones. This is another 3mm pick. I don't like this as much because the non-tapered edge doesn't feel as good to me. Big stubbies feel a little better. So yeah, this is the Altamira M01F, and I like it a lot. Because for me, there are slightly cheaper Gypsy jazz guitars that you can get that are around the $600 range that are gonna be great. They're gonna be fine. I sort of felt that I was passionate enough about the music that I didn't want to go the absolute cheapest. Now, just as a warning, you can't go cheaper, I think, than around $600. The reason is because, you know, these guitars really need to be well made with good materials, or else they're going to not sound good. And I'll tell you an anecdote. When I was much younger, I bought a really cheap Gypsy guitar. I had the big oval sound hole, and, you know, it was just like a couple $100. And it was an impulse buy. It actually sounded good. It sounded like what you would expect, but almost immediately the soundboard started warping. I mean, it just wasn't made well. And I remember my guitar teacher, who was also a repair guy, he put a special post in it to keep it up, and it just never, you know, really recovered after that. I ended up getting rid of it. You really do have to spend a little bit. This isn't like with an electric guitar, you know, you get that you know, lower end Epiphone Les Paul copy, and you're fine, you're golden, you know, like it's just a matter of degrees. Here, I really do think you need to get in at what would be considered, I think, the mid-level on an electric guitar. If you're spending $600 on electric, you're in the mid-range now, I would say, in terms of like what normal, you know, regular people spend on guitars. And like I said, I just wanted to go a bit above that because I knew I was passionate about the music. And so this is, you know, got just a bit more interesting quality of the antiqued top and even the cool special look and everything. And of course it's well reviewed and I can see why. It sounds great. So yeah, Altamira M01F. And again, I got this from Gypsy Jazz Distribution on Reverb. Certainly 5 stars from me, which is good because I had to, you know, get into this sight unseen. So I highly recommend this. The only way I think this isn't a good guitar for you, other than you maybe want to go down to the $600 guitars that you see, would just be if this style bothers you. I think for some people, you know, they might be like, that does not look right, you know, because there is a lot of traditionalism in this. And even when Eastman, by the way, my second place finisher when I was shopping around were the Eastman Gypsy Jazz guitars they started making. Those are really cool, but, you know, I just didn't think they were quite as cool as the Altamira with the F-holes, but they have a really gorgeous hand-rubbed varnish, but, you know, even in the reviews I was reading, it was like, look, you can't, you know, you can't show up on the bandstand with that. People are going to freak out. So, okay, here's the natural finish, right? So maybe you're concerned with a really traditional look, and this, you know, isn't for you. Then you want something that just really is 100% what Django had. For me, I just like the little nod. Hey, I play regular jazz too, and I like arch tops. And so, you know, this kind of gets me that sound with a nod to some other things that I like. All right, so folks, hope you like this, and hope you keep checking out the channel. Thank you.